Welcome to the Morning Shift AI podcast, where we bring a hands on, practical approach to navigating the complexities of artificial intelligence. We're your hosts, Doctors Joe Yoon and Peter Ondish. In an AI driven world filled with uncertainty, this podcast focuses on giving you real world, grounded insights to help you find greater clarity for your future. Each episode, we sit down with industry experts, innovators, and everyday people who are navigating the fast changing world of AI, from the factory floor to the family dinner table. We'll dig into real stories, practical applications, and ethical considerations to help us all figure out AI together. Now, today, we're excited to welcome Dr. Sami Mian, an assistant teaching professor at Arizona State University's Polytechnic School. Dr. Mian is a multifaceted expert in robotics and artificial intelligence with a career spanning academia, industry, and entrepreneurship. From building drone swarms at NASA to developing cutting edge AI solutions at Amazon, Sami has been at the forefront of technological innovation. His work encompasses autonomous systems, smart cities, and revolutionizing computer science education. Dr. Mian's unique blend of practical experience and academic insight offers a valuable perspective on the current state and future potential of AI and robotics. We're straight up looking forward to diving into these topics and more with Dr. Sami Mian. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. It's an honor to be here, especially for your second podcast. And we're all friends here. So moving forward, please, just Sammy.
Perfect. Well, Sami, it is. We've been talking about this episode quite a bit before. Obviously, we're recording this right now, and I'm super excited, especially because you've got some insider knowledge that you probably fully can't share because of certain confidentiality requirements at Amazon. But your just work history and academic history. I mean, there's just few people out there that can match you in your journey. So, with that said, you've had a diverse career spanning academia, industry, and entrepreneurship. Tell us a bit about that journey and how you ended up touching all these realms.
Oh, boy. Well, first off, thank you. Very kind words. If I went into full detail, we'd be here till the sun set and rose again. That's saying something because I live out in the desert. Um, you're right. I have spent probably the last 12 to 15 years working with robots and with technology in some fashion. I got pretty involved early on. I mean, before even college, just kind of focusing on education of all things and how do you use robotics to help teach engineering. That's how I got my start actually doing middle school, high school robotics. And I found that to be really cool just because, with a robot, you get this instant feedback, right? Oh, look, the wheel turned, the arm moved, the robot went and ran into a wall. Hey, that's progress, right? Um, and I always had this kind of curiosity, right? Just wanted to learn more, play more, take something apart, hopefully put it back together. When I was 5 or 6, I had my first own screwdriver set that my dad gifted me. So um, that kind of started the tie-in with academia. You'll see I joined Arizona State University in 2012 and never officially left. I was first a student there, got involved in a research lab, several actually. And after I left, still kept some ties to the university, be it advising, teaching, serving as an adjunct, reviewing students' research and work. Even when I was working on my PhD in Pittsburgh, I was still affiliated with Arizona State in some way.
And Arizona is where you grew up, right? So that's kind of the natural
Correct.
reason why you were at ASU.
Arizona was home. I got to know the university at a young age because my dad was an adjunct professor there as well.
Okay.
Physics, a little different from my area, but it just made sense when it came time to go to college, go work with the people I'd already known and kind of get a chance to do something new. For my PhD, I did end up leaving. In academia, usually it's frowned upon if you have all your degrees from the same university, especially if you want to go back and teach there. And so early on, one of my mentors and my thesis advisor actually told me, go elsewhere, get a doctorate if you really want to, and then come back and you'll have an opportunity to teach for us. And somehow that's exactly what happened.
Yeah, I've heard that advice. I mean, it's very much advice that everybody gives, which incidentally, I completely went against it and got all my degrees at the University of Illinois. But that's kind of just who I am. I totally don't listen to what anybody says, but that's maybe either a strength or a total failure of myself. But perfect, Sammy. So you went to Pitt, or did you go to Pitt or did you go to Carnegie Mellon? I forget which one.
So I went to Pitt officially.
Yep,
That is where there's this fantastic National Science Foundation cooperative research center that was funded by a majority of the NASA research labs and a bunch of different players in the space world.
that's right.
And I went there because, I was really interested in working on space-based applications. Um, I'll back up a little bit, right? So I finished up at ASU. I actually stayed and did my master's there while running a think tank at the university with a couple other friends. We worked for the president's office and for the head of research. Uh, and he, was also my research mentor. Spent 2 years working underneath him. We worked on moonshot projects. I also dipped my toes into entrepreneurship a little bit and built a biomedical devices company. Um, for me, theory wasn't enough, right? Like I said,
Yeah.
I got interested in robotics, and what I found is I was somebody who liked to build with his hands. I was that kind of engineer, right? If I couldn't make it and I couldn't let it fly out into the real world, it didn't exist to me. And so that kind of is what pulled me into industry and entrepreneurship, right? Taking these ideas that I was learning in the academic world and finding some sort of fit for either society or for specific people or for companies and actually delivering a physical product or entity.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I think that's a really interesting thing to think about because maybe some of our listeners, if any of you have gone through academia, it's kind of one of those systems where, especially if you're going to grad school, they really push you towards being an academic and either working in a academic lab or maybe you can go work for a tech company in their research division. But it's really all about research. And I realized that I thought I was alone when I was going through grad school because my thing was I want to build actual technology. I want to start businesses. I want to do things, but not leave academia completely because I love academia for certain aspects. But I also want to get my hands dirty in a sense and build product and test it out and get it out there. But I realize more and more that there's so many more people now in academia that have that kind of mindset. And Sammy, that's exactly kind of the mindset that you're talking about, which is like you have still right now connections to all of these realms. You're in academia, but you're also working with companies. You may also be starting companies yourself, and you're testing out real products. So that's kind of part of your DNA, if I'm not correct.
Absolutely. It's I could never just sit in a room and write papers and and work on a whiteboard. I mean, no offense to any academic out there. I have so much respect for what they do, but for me, it just get a little boring. Like if I can't really test my theories and build something in out there in the market with real people, it's not going to fly. And I got lucky because the first entrepreneurial type experience I got to have was actually doing some work for a self-driving car company
Oh,
where
tell us
we were
about that.
literally, yeah, absolutely. Well, I was really lucky during my undergrad days. I got to go and study abroad in Singapore, of all places. They had the MIT of Asia, known as the National University of Singapore, and they actually had a big research collaboration with MIT.
By the way, that's where I was going to work. I was actually going to move to Singapore, and then last minute got diverted to Pittsburgh. But and US that they're like the
And US.
Harvard of the
Yeah.
Asia in a sense. Amazing
Uh,
place.
it was a great place. It's funny. I went in there planning to just do some studying and exploring, and ended up getting really, really involved with this professor and his lab. Who turns out while I was there, they were spinning out into a company called Newtonomy,
Hmm.
and I came in and I started as like a research intern. Oh, work on, this embedded systems project. And, we were working on how do you teach a robot how to communicate? How do you teach a car to make its intentions known? Right? When you go and you cross the street in front of some cars, you try to make eye contact with the driver to say, hey, I'm here. You see me, right? You're not going to hit me. You can't do that with a self-driving car.
Oh my gosh, that's interesting. Yeah.
So,
It
trying
explains a little
to,
bit why there's a couple months recently where I was in Austin, Texas, and Austin has a bunch of I don't know if you've ever been there, Sammy.
I
I'm sure
have,
But
Sammy's
there's
been
yes.
there.
I've got a
there
story about it, but yes.
there's a bunch of self-driving cars, and more so, like as of lately, that they're just testing their algorithms on in Austin. And like sometimes you'll be driving around and you'll get into an intersection, maybe not like downtown, but like somewhere around town, and you'll get to an intersection and it'll just be like you and a couple other self-driving cars like waiting at the stop sign. And you're looking at like these self-driving cars and you can't do that thing with the driver. And I was
Yeah.
like, wow, this is such a weird experience. Like it feels like you're part of a bizarre future world. But then you're like, why does it feel so weird? And I think what you just described is actually kind of part of it. Like I
Yeah.
can't look at the drivers and like signal to them like, no, you go ahead, or no, like I'm gonna go ahead, or thank you. It's just you and the machines out there at night.
Yeah. A fun fact. So I live in Phoenix, right? Phoenix is like the test bed hotspot for self-driving cars. To put it in
Mm.
perspective, Waymo, right, one of the biggest companies, they've driven 14,000 miles in Austin as of June of this year. They've driven 5.9 million miles in San Fran, where they're based. They've driven over 15 million miles in Phoenix.
Wow.
I took a
Whoa.
Waymo 2 days ago to get somewhere. It was fantastic. Called it on the little app. It came, picked me up from my house, and took me to the university for like, $10. It was great.
Oh, okay. Let's talk about self-driving cars because we're in it, and you've got expertise and aspects of this. So first, let's go back to that whole thing of okay, if there's nobody in the driver's seat of the self-driving car, like the interaction with it, it's like unnerving, right? And
Yes.
so you mentioned that you were in a lab where you were working on those kind of problems. What are some things that people should know with regards to like how researchers have thought through those kind of issues with dealing with robotic technologies that you can't like make this natural human connection with, right? Like give us some of those thoughts.
Well, and again, everything is my own opinion, as
Sure,
we
sure, sure,
know.
of course.
Back then, when I was talking with researchers, a lot of it was, oh, we're going to teach the car to predict what people are going to do so it can plan around that, right? Very one-sided. We're going to look at LiDAR
Mm.
data and point cloud data and see, are we going to predict, is this person going to walk in front of the car? Are they going to stop and wait? Are they going to jaywalk? Like, let's try and just assume zero information is going to be given to us. We're going to just figure it out based off what we see. Which, to be fair, a lot of us do as drivers, right? We kind of take a look at what's going on and try and make judgments based off of what's safe, what's not safe.
Right. Natural just
Uh,
projections.
exactly. But over the years, we found that, there have been more studies done on this where they say, no, like it is a little more than that, right? People tend to communicate, cars communicate with each other in certain ways. I mean, look at the turn signal. Pedestrians try and get people's attention. I remember seeing, I don't know if it was a skit or I think it was a skit, but just the funniest thing ever where somebody online was showing, oh, yeah, here's a crosswalk where many cars have been known to hit pedestrians. Well, in order to curb that, at each end of the crosswalk, we're going to hand a pedestrian trying to cross a brick. They're just going to hold a solid brick in their hand and stare the cars down as they walk across. Guess what? Nobody got hit. Nobody even came close to those pedestrians. And I get that that is it was probably a comedy sketch, but it does convey an important point, which is there is a lot of information you can get from the pedestrians themselves that's more than just,
Mm.
location. Everything from what they're holding to eye contact to body posture and language that we just quite haven't been able to capture with these cars. And
Yeah.
so it's this
Mm.
human computer interaction that's become so much more important. I know Carnegie Mellon has a huge center focused on a lot of this work. How do we make this a symbiotic relationship? How do we make this, uh, you know, duplex information, right? The cars need to be sharing information with pedestrians and vice versa.
Right.
Yeah. That makes total sense, and that makes me think that our future of having robots in different forms all around us, it's probably going to be way different than any of us could ever kind of imagine it to be right now. Because again, we think of things in like a one way fashion rather than understanding that no, anything that we interact with, those things, even though they're not human, they kind of interact with us too. Like they're sending us signals too. And when you mentioned turn signals of cars, it's true. Like the actual machine is communicating with us, not just the person, right? And we just don't notice those things because they're not something that we think about. But once we encounter this robotic, non-human thing, then we realize when those things are missing, right?
Yeah.
Do you have a
It's almost
Roomba
like
at your house?
I
Sorry,
do.
Peter. Go ahead.
Oh no, sorry. I was just going to say it's almost like the way that so much of our communication happens is just nonverbal. And
Yeah.
because it's nonverbal, it happens below like your conscious awareness, kind of like how you posture. I love the example of like carrying the brick across the street, and what that implies, but it's a very nonverbal communication. And like it does actually like require a lot of deliberate consideration of like, hey, what are my nonverbals considering? And are those nonverbals important? And to what extent should we make technology that also adapts some of those nonverbal? Maybe it has to be done in a verbal way, but still communicates what we would, as people interacting in an organic social situation, communicate nonverbally.
Well,
Yeah.
think about when COVID first hit, right? And we moved all from in-person meetings to Zoom.
Yeah.
And how that worked for some people, but for a majority of us, it was a little more difficult to connect with people and to kind of understand what people were conveying, because now you just have this square box around the face. Sometimes there's a lag, sometimes you miss things. If you're not looking directly at them, you're going to miss these nonverbal cues. The research lab I worked in when I did my master's, one of the labs I was affiliated with, they focused on building technologies to help adapt for people who maybe they were lacking in either their vision, or they had some hearing loss, or they had other impairments that again didn't keep them from doing anything in day-to-day life, but made it harder for them, right? The great example was, well, if somebody is vision impaired or is completely blind and they're sitting in a room interacting with people, how can they get a read on the sense in the room? So this person across from me is smiling, that person is frowning, that person looks angry. If I can't visibly see their face, how can I tell that? And so we built these assistive technologies to help convey a lot of that, because we found it was huge in terms of how you have a communication.
That makes total
Conversation.
sense.
Yeah.
And you asked if I had a Roomba. So yes, I have a Roomba 960 in the basement, and then I just recently bought a Roborock S8 Plus, I think it's called, for
Nice.
my first floor, so I could do a segmented room cleaning. But why do you ask that question, Sammy?
Well,
Besides trying to be, besides trying to infiltrate into the data of my house.
Yeah. iRobot, sponsor me. No, I mean, have you ever had them text you saying, "Help! I'm stuck on a
Yes.
ledge." I'm like,
They really do that?
Yeah, they do that.
Yeah. Help! I'm
Can you
stuck,
text
or
it
my
back?
battery's low. Which is great, right? The fact that these robots are now built so they can ask for help. The cobots at Carnegie Mellon were built. In part, they could ask people for help. Hey, I can't press the elevator button. Can you press this floor for me, please and thank you? There is a lot of this we're starting to see now in consumer technology, where it's okay for the technology to ask for help or convey something, because otherwise, what's it going to do if your Roomba's battery dies? Like, there's no way for it to get back to the charging point. You have to intervene.
That's awesome. By the way, Pete, I sometimes text it back and say, "Hey, sorry, I'm busy." So
I was gonna say, like, you're gonna
I'm
have to
just
make
kidding.
it worth my while.
Yeah. Just remember, they're remembering all this stuff for 1,000 years down the road when they rise up.
Dude.
Okay, Sammy,
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead. Pete, go ahead.
I was just saying, there might be some truth to that, actually.
Yeah.
Like, we're joking, but yeah, maybe be nice to the robots.
I always say please and thank you to my Siri and my Google and my Alexa just in case.
Yeah. Actually, that's not really a joke, because now researchers are finding that, some of these large language model systems, one of the keys is trying to help them to have longer memories so that they can do more advanced tasks. And so they remember things like how nice you are to them, which is, again, this is kind of eerie and crazy into the future. But
Yeah.
one last question about self-driving cars that I have to ask, and just to get your thoughts on this and your opinion, because I don't know the technology super well, but I have a general understanding of how most of it works. And one of my neighbors asked me the other day, we were at, I guess this was in the summer. He asked at the pool, and he had just bought a Tesla with the full self-driving capability, right? And he said to me, he's like, "Hey man," he's like, AI, right? And I was like, "Yeah, I guess." And
I guess.
I don't know. I guess so. I guess I know AI. And he's like, "I just got this new Tesla, blah 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 blah, and I've been just using the self-driving feature. Should I be worried? Should I be concerned? And I looked at him and I was just like, man, I don't want to burst this guy's bubble, because he just spent a ton of money on this car. And, I don't want to be one of those like total downers and be a jerk. But I just said to him, I said, "Hey man, here's the deal. I'm not an expert in this, but the fact that Teslas only have one mode of sensing, which is camera vision, right? There's a lot of situations in which just having one sensor, especially if your life is at stake, is going to be highly problematic." And so I would say that, personally, I wouldn't use the full driving capability unless I'm being very attentive to the road. And that was my take. Is like that's my real take. Like that's how I would use that car. But Sammy, I wanted to know, since you have a much better sense of these things and much more expertise in this, what are your thoughts on that self-driving technology?
Honestly, I think you put it really great, right? Which is, let me make an analogy. You talk about having one sensor system kind of make all your decision making. When you're driving, or even when you're riding your bike, right? You're using your sight, you're using your physical touch. You feel how the road is. We've got this thing we call a gut instinct, which you shouldn't ignore all the time. If you have this instinct that something's going to go wrong, you have your hearing, you have all of these different sensors and sights, right, that are kind of feeding you input on what's going on in the real world. And just like any self-driving car, they've got a bunch of sensors and modality. But on top of that, we have this wealth of knowledge and experience that I kind of boil down into, all right, this is my gut instinct. I've seen this before. I know this thing. This feels off. This doesn't feel right. These cars haven't been driving long enough to have this type of gut instinct. So it's more of I'm going to react based off what I see now instead of what I can correlate it to something I've done in the past, or just this feels off. So I agree with you that like it is a nice tool to have. I treat it still like your automatic cruise control or your
Yep.
lane centering on the highway, where like again, it's a tool that makes it easier. You cannot disengage. You need to be focused because it can and will fail. Like nothing
Yep.
is perfect, just like no human drivers are perfect. But I do buy into the idea and heavily agree with the fact that using these technologies will severely reduce the number of road crashes, fatalities, accidents, because again, 99% of the time, it's going to do great. It's going to catch issues. We've all seen the videos of Tesla's hard braking before hitting a car. Like that's phenomenal, but that's margin of error still. And we as humans, because we're being told, hey, this technology can do it, this technology is going to solve these problems, we have such a higher bar of expectation that even
Yes.
one failure and we write it off. We need to be a little more forgiving.
Yeah.
Thinking
I love
about it,
that.
thinking about it from a realistic perspective, what do you think are going to be the areas of our daily lives that AI and robotics is going to have the most significant impacts, like over the next decade or so?
The self-driving car being one of them, right?
Yeah.
Now, are we talking about impacts that you will see, or impacts that are happening in the background that directly impact you. And the reason I bring this up is like I think about
Yeah.
all of the robotics being used now in warehouse automation, logistics,
Mm.
construction, which is huge. And like I don't feel that here today, but I
Right.
know if I order something off Amazon.com and ask for it to be show up in an hour, like I know that there's robots making that happen. It's part of the reason it's so fast and so economical.
What about one of each?
Yeah, yep, absolutely.
Or how about this, Sammy? Because I think we want to double click deeply into the Amazon and
Yes.
robotics. So how about you do the see it right now, and then we'll go into Amazon.
Yeah.
That's good. And I had a feeling we might want to talk about that. So here and now, I won't say it's AI in general, but some of the automation stuff, right? I am a big tech head. My entire house is wired up through an
Yeah.
IoT system. It is air gapped, so at least I take some security into account. But like just the fact that a lot of these automations now have made my life easier in terms of just automating the simple things, right? Everything from turning on the lights to cooling my house to running my irrigation system. I just overseeded my lawn and it needs to run, 6 times a day for like a minute just to get it wet. But the fact that I don't have to go and manually do that, I didn't even have to go and program it outside. It took me a
Dude,
minute on my phone.
do you have that
Hmm.
Ranchio thing?
Ranchio, explain.
Or maybe their name's wrong, but that smart irrigation system box. It's like a Nest, but for your lawn irrigation system.
Yeah, mine's HydroWise.
Oh, HydroWise.
Hmm.
Okay, there's
So,
another one called like Rancher or Ranchio or something like that. Anyways, please keep going.
but,
I'm getting really excited about these things because I'm trying to figure out my irrigation system,
well,
smart system.
and irrigation is great because, like, I live in the desert, right?
Yeah,
And so,
yeah,
Yeah.
like, I'm trying to be really big on water conservation. And I know I
yeah.
just said I have a lawn, very small lawn, just for the animals. Luckily, we let the grass die out in the summertime, so we're not using water. But using this thing, we've been able to optimize when we water. We've been able to minimize how much water we're running and wasting. If there's a leak, it tells me right away. If it
Ah,
rains, once in a blue moon when it does, it'll cut itself off. Like just using one of these things has positively impacted my water bill and my experience tending to my garden, my lawn, and my trees. So that has been a real impact, and just kind of how I've gotten my entire house wired up. My office is filled with computers and servers, and I've got a dedicated mini split in here. I temperature control my office separate from the house, and believe it or not, that has dropped my power bills too.
Hmm.
And that is running on a smart system where it's constantly updating itself. Again, it's 120 degrees outside, sometimes in the summertime, and it's a cool 70 degrees in here with all of these machines running. And that's in part thanks to AI.
that's amazing. And by the way, if people don't know what a mini split is, it's kind of this. I don't know if next generation is the right word, but I have one in my basement. It's basically this kind of contained HVAC heating and cooling appliance that uses a heat transfer technique. It's really cool. It's people should consider it because it also saves quite a bit of energy to use one of these systems.
The efficiency rating on this one is, I think, triple or quadruple what I have on the roof of my house for Central. Like that's how much more efficient this system is.
Well, this is all positive sides of AI, and one thing I wanted to make sure that we definitely talked about today is that Sammy has incredible experience working at Amazon.com specifically, and specifically within their robotics division to help figure out how to do deliveries in a more intelligent way. So, Sammy, can you tell us what you can tell us, because I'm sure some of it's
Sure.
confidential, but can you tell us what your role was at Amazon, what you did, and then how kind of AI and robotics came into play and how that contributes to the experience that we have now with Amazon.com?
Absolutely. It's funny. I went to Amazon actually after a 3-year stint at a drone startup based out of Austin, and so we'll get to that. But yeah, I joined Amazon originally as just a software manager. They found me and reached out and said, "Hey, you have all of this practical experience, not only in robotics but in productization. Taking prototypes and turning them into production level quality systems. You've worked with researchers, you've worked with scientists. We've got this problem." we have this division at Amazon called Amazon Robotics and AI that traditionally was just a lot of scientists, right? Very bright people working on science. And they've come up with this really cool idea that can be turned into a system we can run in the warehouse. But in order to do that, we need to build this giant monolithic robot system. And I'll explain what it does in a second. But we need to take something the cutting edge science this team is doing and make it actually run on motors and wheels and conveyor belts. And then we need to be able to optimize it, really optimize it, think about Amazon scale, and then take it out all across the world. And so the idea for this product is consolidation. Now, what is that? Joe, have you gone on Amazon.com and ordered more than one thing at a time?
Yes.
Did they ever show up in the same box?
Yes. Actually, a thing that I do that I know probably pisses Amazon off is I'll just order like a random one thing in the morning, and then I'll like order something else in the early afternoon, and then order something in the evening. And if I was just a little bit more responsible, I should have just did it all in one order at one time. But I do it at different times throughout the day. But nowadays, it still all comes in as one order to my doorstep, which I'm guessing you're going to tell me you developed.
Help develop. I'm not taking credit for it, but it was called order consolidation, right?
Interesting.
So we want to try, if somebody's ordering multiple items, we want to get them all together. We want to pack them in the same box safely to make sure everything is still protected, but it shows up at the same time. It is a better experience for the customer because you're getting everything all at once. You're getting fewer boxes, and it's a better experience logistically for shipping because now it's just one box to your doorstep instead of 5 or 10 or, knowing you, Joe, 50. And turns out like that was a major multi-billion-dollar problem for Amazon, like what they were spending every year to do it by hand. And so they said, listen, we're going to build a team that's going to automate this process. We're going to build a giant robot system that's going to integrate with the current warehouses and replace all the people doing this. Not replace them in terms of take their jobs, but make it easier for them to get this done. If you look it up, it was called the Orca Project at Amazon. There's some stuff about it. Eventually, it got shut down, and I can't talk about what happened with it. But let's just say that a lot of the things we worked on are still alive and well in a lot of the warehouses around the world.
Wow.
But yeah, it was a huge undertaking. I came in as a software manager and ended up, through a few people leaving and moving around, assuming a lot more responsibility than what was originally supposed to happen. I think I was, 26, 27 at the time. And, at one time I had 3 software teams reporting to me. It was quite fun. Given my background in hardware and in science, I also had worked with a bunch of hardware engineers. I worked with a team of PhD scientists who were amazing at what they did. But my team was a crack team that basically took a lot of that science, turned it into software code, and then optimized it to work on these behemoth systems inside these warehouses.
What were some of the basically hardest problems for you guys to work through to finally get this thing to really start doing what it was intended to do?
Well, the way Amazon runs their warehouses, and I have to be careful here, is, they have these very high level systems that basically they treat these warehouses like an organism, right? Where you have very high level orchestration systems that determine what's going on across the entire warehouse at once when it comes to the robots and automation. And we would have to interface with that, and we would have to interface at the very other end, writing ladder logic for PLCs on these systems.
PLC, what's a PLC?
So a programmable logic circuit, they are what's used to run a lot of industrial hardware and processes.
Yep.
Big emphasis on safety, which was key at Amazon. But dealing with that big shift in complexity and everything in between, like just writing software to integrate with all of that, to meet security requirements and to meet efficiency requirements, was very difficult. And then in our case, once we built the system, right, they said, cool, you've made it run at this level. Now we need you to quadruple the efficiency, figure it out. I kid you not when I say I spent an entire weekend with a team of mainly PhDs in a conference hall, just writing along the walls, whiteboard walls, all of the steps in the process, trying to figure out, all right, where can we optimize this? We can shave off a second here. We can shave off 0.3 seconds there. If we change the algorithm for motion planning here, we can save an additional 2 seconds. Um, all in the name of hitting those efficiency targets that Amazon needed, right? Instead of handling one package per minute, they wanted 5 or 10 or 20, because Amazon is a company that builds at scale. And
Yeah.
the further you scale and the more savings you have, I mean, that stuff grows exponentially.
Man, Sammy, I feel like we could talk about this all day, but just due to time, and we always want to get back to the kind of how do we prepare our young people for the future. But you worked on this technology at Amazon with regards to their robotics that had insane budgetary numbers, top of the top of the line technology in electronics and robotics that runs a huge portion of the e-commerce on the internet. So huge project. You have experience with working on next gen drone technologies. You've had experience working on space technologies. You've had experience working on self driving cars. I mean, the list goes on, right? I guess one thing that maybe our listeners and I'm definitely interested in is what do you see for the future? Right? I mean, what we have these next generation robotics that are seemingly continuously just evolving and it's accelerating as to what these things can do. You see what kind of Gen AI can do and traditional AI. I don't know. What are some of your thoughts and projections for the future for robotics and how they interface with us?
That's a really good question. Um, I will say, since you mentioned space, I've gotten a chance to launch a few rockets here and there with payloads that I've helped build over the years.
What?
I story for another time. Once was actually right before I left for Amazon, launching a couple of their Kuiper satellites. I think robotics and automation first for the space domain has huge applications.
Hmm.
Uh, Mostly because we don't have a lot of us up there, right? So we need the robots to be self-critical.
Interesting.
Ah.
Um, they need to be able to manage everything they're doing, and so like that, I see that as a huge frontier as we try and further explore and colonize and just move a lot of capabilities into space. AI and automation is going to become huge because there's no physical way for us on Earth to be able to manage things out there with the time sensitivity and requirements they need.
Wait. Okay, sorry, I didn't want to cut you off, but just this thought popped in my head. So you know how nowadays they've got these Gen AI software systems where they create like this little game, and then people are actually starting to, or little AI characters in the game are making decisions for themselves, and then they're like, like voting each other off of like certain company boards. Like none of this is there's no human intervention. They're just like interacting with each other.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think that we could create a world in space where we have robot communities that we can observe that have full autonomy, but then we're watching how these robots interact with each other in like Mars? And then if all goes like bad, then we'll just be like, all right, it's out in Mars though. It's okay.
Yeah, well, we could just nuke Mars. It's fine. Uh, it is a very interesting thought experiment, actually.
Right?
When I was a researcher, I used to spend hours staring at ant colonies, trying to just learn what is swarm intelligence
Huh.
and swarm behavior, and we gleaned a lot just from like watching ants interact with each other. Um, and honestly,
Yeah.
I think the same could be true with watching robots, right? Seeing how they learn to interact with each other, if they have the capabilities, and seeing what kind of you know latent behaviors emerge, and like trying to correlate, is that something we programmed or coded, or is this something novel that's just formed? It's always fun to watch an AI just kind of get stuck
Yeah.
Mm.
and just work itself into a hole. Pete, I'm sure given your background, you've thought quite a bit about
Oh
this.
yeah, yeah.
But you know it, I don't know if I'm all for sending. I mean, technically, Mars is the only planet right now that's fully colonized by robots, so we've already done that.
Yeah.
It's very true,
But
actually.
honestly, I would be all for that. I'm like, let's slingshot a few more robots out there and just be like, go explore, have a good time.
Yeah, this is so interesting. Anyways, I cut you off. Keep going, man. So you're thinking, you're saying, which totally makes sense. Space is going to need to have advanced robots because that's the only thing that could survive out there right now, right?
Mm.
So
Well,
what
and
are some other thoughts?
when you're talking about mission critical systems, and like we
Yeah,
talk about driving too, right? The reaction time you need to make decisions, right? In some cases humans just aren't going to cut it either, because if we're here on Earth, it takes whatever how many minutes to get a message out to Mars, 14 minutes. If it's a car and we're driving at 300 miles an hour, humans can't react fast enough to react to something. So I see it almost as a way of AI is both heightening our reflexes as well as making it so that we are able to extend, our bounds on what we can do physically, right? Because suddenly our processing speed, our communication latency is not the bottleneck anymore, because we can have a trusted system to kind of represent us in those decisions. Just like how your body, some of your reflexes and your motor control is handled by your spinal cord, not your brain, because of just the
yeah.
latency. So,
Oh my gosh. That's a whole topic I remember studying in grad school. I think it's called embodied cognition,
mhm.
which is this whole study of like, it's actually not your brain that makes a lot of your bodily decisions. Like your body parts have, uh, basically, there's not enough time to go to your brain and come back. So there's functions in your body that just kind of automatically work without having to go to your
Mm.
brain. Anyways. That's a whole
Yeah.
side of science that we can't talk about. But okay. So
But
Sammy, again. Oh, go ahead, Sammy.
no, I was going to say that is one avenue, and the other, that we touched on this briefly earlier, is like we look at ChatGPT and these other tools, which again, they're tools in my view. The invention of ChatGPT and other LLMs right now, I equate it to what Excel was,
Yeah.
in
Mm,
the 70s, 80s, 90s, right? Where it's a tool. It's helping us automate a lot of processes that we used to just do by hand or via Abacus, if you're Joe. Um, and there are going to be a set of power users who really, really learn how to use it. Just like, there are people who have competitions in Excel now who
Yeah.
can
yeah.
format a table the fastest. It's going to be the same with these LLMs. But at the end of the day, it's a tool, and you need to understand its kind of its bounds, right? We know it can do this much, but this is where it cuts off, and everything after that is just magical make believe.
Man.
Which
Actually, I watched one of those Excel competitions. That's kind of
I've
funny.
never
Sorry,
Wild,
heard
Pete, to
of
right?
one
cut
of
you off.
these.
It's
I would love to see
wild.
them.
No, they're real. There's a
Dude,
world championship for Excel. It's wild.
tasks
It's
do they ask
nasty. I
them
was
to
going to
do?
say like,
Yeah. And meanwhile, I remember 10 years ago when somebody was showing me for the first time, they're like, yeah, you type in the numbers here, and if you highlight it, it adds them all up for you
oh
automatically. How
yeah,
cool is that?
like
And
you
I'm like,
just
okay.
drag
Yeah.
it. Yeah,
I'm like,
yeah.
all right, cool. That's like just asking ChatGPT, just using ChatGPT as a Google search. I'm like, all right, basic concepts, that's fine. But now let's get into some really cool
Yeah.
things.
Yeah. Sorry, Pete. We cut you off.
Yeah, I forget what I was gonna ask. Sorry.
All good. All good.
I will say one thing I'll just mention, because we talked about entrepreneurship earlier. I'm pretty involved with that still in the local community. And one of the things I got some students to do was I say, hey, have ChatGPT pretend to be one of your target customers. You're
Mm,
shopping for a car. Have ChatGPT pretend to be a Tesla fan, and now ask some questions and try and sell them on your new EV. See what kind of feedback you get.
Mm.
And that actually worked wonders for them just doing a little bit of product market research.
oh yeah, customer
Mm.
discovery. Yeah, that's great. All right, Sammy. So we're gonna hit at one more area of your expertise, which is just multifaceted, which is education. And specifically, we want to end every episode with considering the young people that we have in this world and their future as we become more AI enabled as a global world. And I have to say that, as Pete and I do AI consulting out there, or as I go speak at different conferences, the most common and frequent question that I get is, what should I do with my kids? How should we prepare our kids for the future? And so you have deep education background. In fact, I'm sure you're teaching AI to people in different ways. And so, what are some of your thoughts as to how parents should be considering their kids and education for their kids as AI continues to move forward, and not just Gen AI, right? Just
Yeah.
robotics, everything, right? What are some of your thoughts?
Okay, wait, let's talk about the kids first, and then let's just do education at a high level, because I
Yeah,
think
let's do
a
it.
lot of what you do, even with your consulting, is education.
Mm,
Um, I have always had a soft spot for younger education. I spend a lot of time, my volunteer time these days, volunteering with middle school and high school robotics. Again, it was a big part of my upbringing, and I spent a lot of time there. AI, like I said, like Excel, it's another tool. It is
mm,
just a way more impactful tool in both the positive and negative directions, right? I
yeah.
think it's not something to shield your kids from. I think it's something that needs to be explained to them. I think, just like the calculator, you hand them that in high school and say, well, this is how you use it, and this is where you should use it, and here's where you really don't need it. Um, AI is something that's going to become intricate in all facets of our life.
Yeah.
I think I remember there's a famous quote. I want to say it's from fiction somewhere, maybe science fiction, that one of the ways you can gauge an advanced civilization is by how intuitive their technology is.
Ooh.
And I've seen 2-year-olds just going crazy on an iPad, opening games and buying things, and like, because the controls are so intuitive. And I'm hoping AI will get there soon through some of these aspects. I've watched 2-year-olds ask Alexa to put on whatever show, and it works, and that warms my heart, because I'm like, look, at least they're learning, they're interacting. An important part of education, though, is also, all right, here is how the technology is being mistreated. This is what you need to watch for. We know with AI, there's a lot of fake stuff that's being produced. There's a lot of deep fakes on the internet. There's a lot
Yep.
of unfactual information. And so, a core part of education, I think, from a young age, is being able to discern what is real and what is fake, and understanding the value in that. And I think that's something that every parent should be considering as well. Don't be afraid of the AI, but understand that there needs to be more breadth in terms of explaining impact, explaining purpose, and explaining, the pros and cons.
Yeah, man. I actually, what you just said resonates with me as a parent because as I've been teaching my kids more and more about AI, in fact, my 10-year-old, she came to me last night and said, "Hey, you have this website that has all these videos on AI. Can I watch them?" Which is hilarious. It's like, yeah, I'd love for you to watch AI lessons that your dad created. Um, but then I started realizing, okay, some of the stuff that I talk about, like misinformation, disinformation, it doesn't really make sense unless she understands what the internet is and how the internet is kind of broken, right? And
Yeah,
so like that basis has to be given to her first before like my downstream explanations of like how AI can create misinformation, but how it could also help to mitigate
yeah,
misinformation. Like so it's more broad than just AI. It's like we
agreed.
need to help our kids have this larger understanding of the cyber space. I don't know how else to say this,
Yeah.
and how it all works. Attention based economy concepts, these kind of things. I think it's much larger than just AI.
Agreed. I think it's technology in general. It's the internet
Yeah,
in general. I mean, when you were a kid, when I was a kid, my parents told me, don't get into a van with a stranger who offers you free candy. Well, it's important we teach kids, like, what is a modern day version of that? Um,
yes,
and I was shaped by the internet from a young age. I remember being, 5, 6, 7 years old, and listening to my computer scream as it tried to connect to the internet via a phone cable, and that was, one of
I
my
remember
first
that.
experiences. Yeah, it was formative for me. And
The
I, with working with computers and tech that young, is probably what helped set me on this path.
yeah,
And it's made it so, like, I'm able to, I'm very happy with my career. I'm able to thrive. I can still pick up technology today. I'm very worried about when the day comes when I'm going to be able to pick up a piece of technology and I'm not going to get it. Right? I'll
mm,
be like, back in my day, it was just a touchpad, not a whatever brainwave pad we have.
Yeah. Yeah, I love it.
Interesting.
By the way, our producer, his name is Adi, and Adi, I don't know if you can do this, but if you can get the old school modem connection sound and put that at the end of this podcast episode. If not, that's cool. But I still distinctly remember that sound. It's pretty awesome. That's what Sammy's
For our
talking
younger
about.
audience.
Headphone warning for anybody wearing AirPods or something.
Yeah.
Like it might shatter your eardrums.
Yeah, turn the volume down. It's so funny. I had a friend growing up who had like a parrot that lived like just in their home, like next to kind of where the computer was. Like when everyone kind of first got their PCs, a lot of like people kind of put these in like family areas. And so like they had their parrot like next to this like computer, and this was when they had dial-up internet, and it would mimic back like those sounds that the dial-up modem would make. And then when we eventually like got more high-speed internet in our area that didn't require the modem itself, they would the parrot would still mimic these sounds like after it was taken down, which I thought was like really funny.
That's unbelievable. And now, Adi, you have to make this happen, Adi. You have to put that sound, because for younger people, they have no idea what we're talking about. So we'll find that sound, and for extra credit, Adi, if you can find a parrot that also makes that
Even
sound, then that'll be next level.
I actually
All
wanted
right,
to ask
well-
Sammy one more question though. Yeah.
Oh, go ahead,
Sammy,
Pete.
so
Yeah, let's do it.
I'm really,
One more.
I'm really
Time.
curious, like
Let's
as
go.
someone who has expertise in all of these different areas and has seen like all of the really useful applications that AI has, are there certain areas where you feel like I don't want AI here, and I'm nervous about the way that maybe we're over technologizing some area that maybe it shouldn't be there? Like, are there places where you're kind of protective?
Well, so just like you guys, I actually do quite a bit of consulting in this space, and I talk with companies all the time about how they've got these problems and they'd love to potentially use AI to solve it, or more often, hey, we want to just use AI somewhere. Where should we use it? Right? I'm sure you guys get that all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And I, being an educator and everything, I obviously try and do an education first approach with here's what AI is, here's what it can do, here's the pros and cons. I've been spending a lot of time recently looking into what are the, not necessarily where is AI being used that it's a problem, like with positive intention, but where's AI specifically being used for negative intentions. I teach a class on cybersecurity and AI, and we talk about all of the issues people are running into where, like, AI agents are being used to either develop DDoS attacks and take down sites, or more prevalently, it's being used for social engineering. So an example is somebody was able to steal a bunch of money from a grandmother because they used an AI to mimic her, I want to say, grandson's voice. And they placed a fake phone call to her saying, hey, I'm in trouble. I'm stuck in jail. Can you please wire me some money? And of course, there's this great story. You can Google it about a financial firm, a bank, I think. Somebody made a deep fake of the CFO, and he got on a video call with an employee and said, hey, it's me. I need you to wire $20 million to this account. It's urgent for a customer. And it was so convincing that the employee did it, and turned out it was
fake.
a scam artist. And so I look at that, and I look at technologies that are being developed that can be used for these nefarious applications, and I'm always like, well, maybe I'm not an alarmist, but like maybe we needed to pause and just think about the potential applications of this, and just be a little bit more careful with kind of what we're putting out there and what we're framing.
That's so interesting. I've heard about this exact scam. I thankfully have never had it's never personally affected me, but I've heard that this is like becoming a more and more common thing where AI will like mimic somebody like either or someone in your family and try to get you to, like send money somewhere. And I remember talking about this with some colleagues, and they were suggesting that it's actually a great family practice to have literally a family safe word that you only talk about in person, and that you kind of recognize as being the thing that will allow you to differentiate yourself as authentic in the event that a situation like this emerges. It's like kind of great and kind of crazy advice.
Yeah, I mean, this is not something we had to do,
Yeah.
10, 20 years ago, but now with the advent of technology, I remember a pal was, really excited about, we had this big time basketball star come in and was checking out some technology he'd made. And we are just trying to drive home the point of like, here's what we can do with AI. He's like, come here, give me a minute, just speak into this mic, give me some words,
Mm,
talk, say this, say this, say this. All right, cool. Guess what? We now have a digital print of your
yeah.
voice. Oh, and now we can sell endorsements from you for all these platforms for podcasts. And it, I mean, rightfully so, freaked him out a little bit. And of course, my friend deleted it afterwards. But like, you can do so much now with so little, with the technology that's out there. Like, one of the things I teach in my class, and we've even done some work around, is like, let's do impact analysis, impact calculus on like what the negative ramifications can be about these technologies.
Mm,
Not to fearmonger, but just as an interesting thought experiment to see, like, just be aware that, like, what was not possible 5 years ago is very possible now,
yeah.
and you need to be ready.
Yeah. What about, because we've talked about some of the more broader nefarious purposes that people could use AI for. This was kind of a response to a question I asked about, like, what are some things you feel protective of? But I wonder from like a more human side, the nefarious things aside, are there like certain things that you, as even like an AI, like someone who's very proficient in AI, say to yourself, I don't want AI to ever do this one thing for me. Like I really like this one thing, and I don't think we should ever build AI to do it.
Mm, that's a good question. My gut instinct is I just think about art
Mm,
and music. I'm not artistically inclined or musically inclined, but my wife is. And she's done some beautiful artwork that I've hanging in my office here. And I think, a lot of that, there's still something just so innately creative and beautiful about, somebody being able to create and convey a message on a canvas. And
yeah.
I know there's been a lot of work with like, look at this robot. Even a robot painting is a little fine, but like AI art generation, like it's not the same in my view. And so, sure, for creating a quick graphic or something, not a problem. But like for true pieces of art, something that's unique, and for like textiles, I'm still a fan of keep it human, keep it, OG creativity. Don't let AI touch
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. I think a lot of us are in that same boat.
What about you guys?
Yeah, I don't know. It's weird because I'm guessing Sammy struggles with that question because he's a tech nerd like I am, right? And so there's just something inherent about technology for us in which we grew up with it where like I don't know, like we just want to see all these different types of things, right?
Mm,
But I think the human aspect is the key, right? That there's certain things like yeah, maybe there could be a robot that is speaks like me and acts like me and maybe even does actions that I would have done, but I wouldn't want that robot taking my place at soccer games for my daughter,
mm,
and like I want to be there for my kids,
yeah.
and so there's something about that presence, that
Yeah.
human presence with another human doing things that are meaningful between those two people or multiple people. That stuff has to remain human,
Mm.
As a side note to that, and I agree 100%. You know what I consider to be a form of art? Cooking.
Yeah,
Mm.
absolutely.
Yeah. I don't want robots making my food. I know there's a lot of automation being used towards that. Not a lot of it has done well. But my robot doesn't have taste buds yet, so I don't trust its judgment on food. I see cooking is the one area where I like to think I'm an artist and a little creative.
Mm,
Um, and there's still so much that is not unknown, but just like unexplored in that realm. But, like, that's another place where I'm like, leave it to
yeah.
us, because I think we can push the boundaries way more than a computer can.
Yeah.
Mm.
Totally.
Mm. Wow, I love it. All right. Well, Sami, thank you so much for your time. So if people want to reach you, or if you want to be reached, where's the best place that they can find out more information about you, or maybe even contact you? Just throw out anything that you would like to throw out to our audience as to them potentially following what you're doing or reading more about what you do. What can they find or look for?
Yeah, I've got, for the longest time, I've been meaning to stand up a blog just to kind of highlight some of the projects I'm doing. So maybe this is
Yeah.
the kick I need to do that. Just myfullname.com. If you put that in right now, samimian.com, it goes to my LinkedIn. I'll give you the link to share with people. They're welcome to reach out. If you search on the ASU website, you'll find me listed as an assistant professor. Um, I have my consulting company as well, Strata Innovations. You can find that all through my LinkedIn, and I'll provide you the links. But always happy to hear from people. At the university, my email is my last name at asu.edu. You're always welcome to reach out. Yeah, I don't know. I have a minimal online presence, in part because of all the security work I've done over the years, and I've seen how that can go sideways. But I always love to hear from people. And Joe knows how to get a hold of me, so just bother him, and he'll be my filter.
Yep. And we'll put in the show notes all the things that Sami sends us that he approves with regards to ways to connect with him. So we'll put that in the show notes. I totally resonate with having a small footprint online because of, my years of working on data and social hacking, basically, what I learned in grad school. And it wasn't until recently I actually started focusing on LinkedIn and building up that presence. But back in the day, it was like, erase yourself from the internet because of what we were learning about how it all works. With that said, go ahead, Sami.
No, I was just saying that reminds me. If you're gonna post this on LinkedIn, shoot me a note. I will make it so you can tag me because I have that turned off. But
See,
for a good friend, I'll allow it this once.
we get the honor of being able to tag Sami. And then for Pete and myself, you could check us out at our site, bluefoxinsights.ai. I'll say that again, blue as in the color, fox as in the animal, the wily but very warm animal, and insights as in thoughts, .ai as in artificial intelligence. And actually, I think it actually stands for Antigua or some country, but has been co-opted by artificial intelligence. So bluefoxinsights.ai, you'll find this Morning Shift AI podcast as well as many other resources to help you have AI insights for Team Human. By the way, that's our new tagline, AI insights for Team Human, because we want to be very forward that we're actually human and that we care about humans and that we're all on this team together as humans. So thank you so much for your time. Sami, thank you again. If you have any last words.
No, I just say thank you for the opportunity. I'm a big proponent of tech and AI, like you said. I think it's an amazing tool. Just we need to remember it's a tool, not a cure, not a end all be all, and we just need to be responsible with how we use it.
Cool.
Because we're all in this together, folks. We are all humans. Let's help each other do this as a team. Thank you so much. And until next time, I don't know, keep it AI, but keep it human.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.